to school from spring break, I guess. And we're going to start Math 6, 10.4 together. So if you're looking at the top of your reteaching page, you'll notice that today's lesson is exploring nonlinear relationships. So what we've been graphing for the past 3 lessons have all been straight lines. So what it means to explore nonlinear relationships is graphing things that are no longer lines. We're going to graph things that take a different shape. In today's lesson, we're going to explore 2 shapes. We're going to explore a U shape called a parabola and a V shape, which doesn't really have a fancy name, and how we know which one we have. So step 1, we're going to look at the example on the left side of your piece of paper, and it's going to be an example of a parabola, so the U-shaped graph. So the graph of y is equal to x squared minus 1 is a U-shaped curve called a parabola. To graph a parabola, follow these 3 steps. So let's start with just writing it out on the board. We have y is equal to x squared minus 1. And we're told it's a parabola. Convenient because they tell us so we don't have to guess. But how would we know that it's a U shape other than them telling us? Well, the answer is the fact that there is this exponent right here. Because there is an exponent there, it will automatically take the U shape. And you don't have to know that when you graph it. You can graph it and you'll see it. But anytime you have an exponent in your relationship or in your equation, it's going to graph with a U shape. That U shape is called the parabola. So, to graph the parabola, follow these 3 steps. Step 1, make a table of values. Step 2, graph the points that you got from your table of values. Step 3, draw the U shape. So let's start with step 1. Step number 1, and we're going to graph our table of values. So just as we did in the previous lessons, we're going to start with our x values. What do we substitute x into? It's that end part of our equation, x squared minus 1. After we do that, we're going to have our y value, and then we'll have our x and our y values, which are our ordered pair. So step 1, we're just creating our table of values. With these problems, we are always going to have 5 values that we plug in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one's going to be our 5th. As we continue to look at the examples, for x, they tell us to use the values -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. That's the value we're going to plug in for x every time. Okay. Get our y, put together our ordered pair. So plug in -2 for x. -2 squared is +4. +4 minus 1 is 3. So when x is -2, y is equal to 3. Our ordered pair is -2, 3. Moving down, plug in -1 for x. We get -1 squared, which is +1, minus 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. We get the ordered pair, -1, 0. So when x is -1, plug back into our original equation, y equals 0. Continue for 0, 0 squared, minus 1. 0 squared is 0, minus 1 is -1. So when x is 0, y is -1. Keep going. 1 squared minus 1. 1 squared is 1, minus 1 is 0. And now we have +1, 0. Next, plug in your 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. 2, 3. And now you can notice kind of a pattern. So we did -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And look at the order of our points. Our first and our last are both our positive and our negative 2. And we get 3 and 3. Our second and our second to last are negative 1 and 1. And we get 0 and 0. They're mirrors of each other. And then our middle point, we ended up with just 0, negative 1. So now that we've done step 1, step 2 is to graph each point. So if we start here, negative 2, 3, 1, 2, up 3, 1, 2, 3, and our point goes right here, and then I made a little post-it note to go on top that hopefully you can see. There we go. Our next point is negative 1, 0. So negative 1, but y is 0, so we don't move down. We just go right there. I took 2 of my post-it notes. Oops. There. Our middle point is 0, negative 1. So x is 0, but y is negative 1. Boom. That's right there. Then we have 1, 0. So x is 1, y is 0. And then our last point is 2, 3. So x is 2, y is 3. And those are all of our points. But now, our very last step is to draw our line. And now having the post-it notes there is not helpful for that. So I'm going to take them off. And now we're supposed to draw a U shape that goes through each of these points. And again, it's a U shape because we have an exponent, and that exponent tells us our graph is going to be a parabola, which is that U shape. So our graph should look a little something like that. Alright, let's move on to our examples. Oh wait, second example, absolute value. So that was the first example for parabola. Now we're going to go on to example 2, which is the absolute value equation. Whenever you have an absolute value in an equation, you're going to end up with a V-shaped graph. So exponent U, absolute value V. And we follow the exact same steps we did before. So start by writing a table of values. So our second example is y is equal to 2 times the absolute value of x. We know we need 5 points. So we're going to start with our x values. What are we going to plug x into? 2 times the absolute value of x. That's going to give us our y. And once we have our x and our y, we have our ordered pair. Boom. The values that they give us are the same as before. So negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. Alright, so we're going to do 2 times the absolute value of x when x is negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Positive 2 times 2 is 4. So our ordered pair when x is negative 2 is negative 2, 4. Repeat, 2 times the absolute value of x when x is negative 1. So step 1, what's the absolute value of negative 1? It's 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Now we have the ordered pair, negative 1, 2. Repeat, 2 times the absolute value of x when x is 0. 2 times the absolute value of 0 is just 0. So the ordered pair is 0, 0. 2 times the absolute value of 1. The absolute value of 1 is just 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. We get 1, 2. Then lastly, 2 times the absolute value of 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And so now we have the ordered pair, 2, 4. And same thing that I pointed out on the last one. Notice that we have -2 and +2. And then notice that our y values are the same. Notice that we have -1 and 1, and our y values are the same, 2 and 2. And then this point right here is our middle point, 0, 0. So our next step is we're going to graph this out. And then our last step is to draw the v. So our first point is -2, 4. So that means x is -2, 1, 2. Y is +4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where one of our points are. Next we have -1, 2. So when x is -1, y is 2. Our second point. Then we have our third point, 0, 0. So when x is 0, y is 0. That's right there at our origin. Fourth point, 1, 2. So when x is 1, y is 2. And then our last point, 2, 4. So when x is 2, y is 4. And those are our points. Last step, draw the v. Again, we know it's going to have a V shape because of the absolute value bar. So let me just extend it past, put your arrows, because we know lines go on infinitely even past where we draw the coordinates. Alright, let's try the 3 examples they give us on the reteaching practice sheet. Alright. The first one they give us is y is equal to x squared minus 2. Now I want you to ask yourself, is this going to take a U-shape or a V-shape graph? Take a second and think that through while I draw it out. We're going to have our x values. We're going to have the value we plug in for x, so x squared minus 2, which is going to give us our y. Then we'll have our ordered pair, x comma y. Alright, you should now know that this graph is going to take a U shape. It's going to have a parabola. How do we know? There's an exponent present. Anytime there is an exponent, it'll have a U-shaped graph. Other thing to remember, every one of these requires 5 points. And they use the same numbers from before. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And we're just going to plug in our x values and see what we get for y. So starting right here, plug in -2 for x. So -2 squared minus 2. So x squared minus 2, when x equals -2. -2 squared is +4. +4 minus 2 is 2. So when x is -2, y is 2. Keep going. X squared minus 2, when x is -1. -1 squared is +1. +1 minus 2 is -1. So when x is -1, y is also -1. X squared minus 2, when x is 0, 0 squared is just 0. 0 minus 2 is -2. So when x is 0, y is -2. X squared minus 2, when x is 1. 1 squared minus 2. 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 2 is -1. When x is 1, y is -1. Last one, 2 squared minus 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. So when x is 2, y is also 2. And same thing that I noticed, or noted earlier, your first and your last terms are opposites, -2 and +2. But notice that their y's are the exact same. Your second term and your second to last term are opposites, -1, +1. But look at your y values. -1 and -1, they're the same. And then this is our middle point. So now that we've found our points using the table, our next step is to graph it. So coming over here, our first point is -2, 2. So when x is -2, y is +2. Put your point right there. Next one, negative 2, or not negative 2, negative 1, negative 1. So when x is negative 1, y is negative 1. So we go down 1. Our middle point is 0, comma, negative 2. So when x is 0, y is negative 2. Put your point there. Fourth one, 1, comma, negative 1. So when x is 1, y is negative 1, right there. And then our last one is 2, comma, 2. So when x is 2, y is 2. Our final step is to either draw the u or the v. We established that this was going to require a u because there's an exponent. So just kind of round out this bottom and draw your graph going up. And hopefully your point passed through your actual point. And it should look something like that. Alright, example 2. Number 2 is y is equal to 2x squared minus 3. So a little bit longer, but we do the same thing. We need our x values, and we know there are going to be 5 of them. What are we plugging x into? 2x to the third, not to the third, 2x squared minus 3. That's going to give us our y value, and then we can put it together for our x and y value. Alright, they give us the same values as before. Negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. And before we start, you want to think through your order of operations. If we have 2x squared minus 3, that means step 1, plug in your value for x, square that value. Once you have that value, you're going to multiply it by 2. After you have that value, you're going to subtract it by 3. So starting with negative 2, I have 2 times negative 2 squared minus 3. So going through it slowly, start with squaring it. So negative 2 squared is positive 4. Take this value and multiply it by 2. So we had negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And now subtract it from 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. Your ordered pair now is negative 2, comma, 5. And just keep going. We have 2 times negative 1 squared minus 3. Step 1, start with your exponents. Move to multiplication, then do your subtraction. So negative 1 squared is positive 1. Positive 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So now we have the ordered pair, negative 1, comma, negative 1. Keep going. 2 times 0 squared minus 3. 0 squared is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. You get the ordered pair, 0, comma, negative 3. Next one, 2 times 1 squared minus 3. 1 squared is just 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. 1, comma, negative 1. And then last one, I'm going to anticipate my answer to be 5 because first and last match. So 2 times 2 squared minus 3. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. And my last point is 2, comma, 5. Next step is to graph it. We have when x is negative 2, y is 5. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put your point right there. Then we have negative 1, negative 1. So when x is negative 1, y is negative 1. Put your point. Our middle point is when x is 0, y is negative 3. Put your point. And then second to last, when x is 1, y is negative 1. Last point, when x is 2, y is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, draw your U shape because we know that it is a parabola because we have x squared. Any kind of graph that is squared is going to take a U shape. And there we go. We're done with that one. All right, last example is example number 3. I'm going to give us a little bit more room for it. All right, example number 3 says y is equal to 1/2 the absolute value of x plus 1. And again, remember your order of operations. We have parentheses and exponents. Parentheses just stands for really grouping symbols, not actually parentheses. An absolute value is a form of a grouping symbol. So step 1 is going to be take the absolute value of whatever your number is, then multiply it by 1/2. Also remember, multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. So absolute value divided by 2, add 1. Grouping symbol, multiplication, then addition. They give us some new values for this one. They say we're only going to use positive values. So we have our x. Where do we plug it in for? 1/2 times the absolute value of x plus 1. That's going to give us our y, and then we'll have our x and our y values. And now they give us starting with -4, -4, -2, 0, 2, 4. All right, starting with -4, we have 1/2 times the absolute value of -4 plus 1. So step 1, take the absolute value of -4. The absolute value of -4 is positive 4. Then what's 1/2 of 4? Half of 4 is 2. So then 2 plus 1 is 3. So we have -4, 3. Keep going. 1/2 times the absolute value of -2 plus 1. What's the absolute value of -2? Absolute value of -2 is 2. What is 1/2 of 2? Half of 2 is 1. So now 1 plus 1 is 2. -2, 2. 1/2 times the absolute value of 0 plus 1. Absolute value of 0 is 0. What is half of 0? Well, half of 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. And now we have 0, 1. 1/2 times the absolute value of 2 plus 1. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Half of 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, just like we thought it would be. Then we get 2, 2. Lastly, 1/2 times the absolute value of 4 plus 1. Absolute value of 4 is 4. Half of 4 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Matches up like we thought it would. And now we have the value 4, 3. Next step is to graph it. Our first value is -4, 3. So when x is -4, 1, 2, 3. Y, oh not 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Y is 3. 1, 2, 3. Put your point right here. Next, -2, 2. So when x is -2, y is +2. Put your point right there. Third value, when x is 0, y is 1. Put your point there. When x is +2, y is 2. Put your point there. And then our last one, when y is 4, or sorry, when x is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Y is 3, 1, 2, 3. Put your point there. And last step is to graph it. And we know we're going to have to graph this one with a V because we have absolute value. Anytime we have absolute value, we graph with a V. True. All right, very Very good.